share something. And so when people have the courage to do that, we want to encourage that further. So that's just a reminder about that.
Thank you, Emily. And I wanted to do a quick check-in like we did last time with kind of figuring out what roles were in the room. And this one's called Weather Report. And we do this ACES Connection a lot when we start our meetings, and we do it verbally. We have too many people on to do it all out loud. But basically, you just put in the chat box, how are you today? How's your weather? Let your folks know, your community doing. How are you doing? Like, I'm sunny today. I was looking forward to this. This always gets me really excited. So I'm great. So I'm sunny. And so, yeah, foggy, perfect. So just put that in the chat for your fellow participants, and let's see how you all are. I love it. Thank you so much. Yeah, great. And I'm going to try to share my screen while you guys are doing that. And I'm going to share with you the visual summary from last week. My good friend Stephanie did one again for us. She can't join us today, but she did one. What's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I will give you a chance to look at that. Hold on one second. All right, so there's our visual summary from last week. We really focused in on regulation and talked about, Emily shared the triangle and talked about proprioception and kind of the things that we do physically to regulate ourselves and how we might help families. People gave some great suggestions of what that looked like. And yeah, it was just a really great conversation around that. And these visuals helped me stay grounded in what we did. And again, I'm still working on that blog post that will incorporate these images and our conversation. I would have to say that these last couple weeks feel a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. But we're doing our best. And then Allison and Emily and I were just saying also that not only are we busier than ever, we also spend more time just staring at the wall. So having to balance that, like our own struggle with productivity and all the things that need to be done is sometimes challenging. So I just wanted to share that with you. The next thing I wanted to share, I'm going to share a link right now in the chat. Hold on one second for everyone. So I came across this article yesterday in Teaching Tolerance on rethinking family engagement during school closure. And they're always one of my favorite resources. I've loved them forever and ever. And I thought this was a good potential starting point for us. And how Emily and I said last week that we would have like this kind of like nerd moment, right? We're not going to do a lot of direct instruction, but we wanted to share something that we found. She shared the triangle last week. I'm going to share a slide with you that kind of gives a summary of it's a very short little article, and also as a prompt to get us thinking, because then we're going to dive into the breakout sessions, because I really want to spend most of the time that we have today in deep discussion and kind of resourcing with each other what's been challenging and what's been working really well. So let me share with you. Oh, I hope so. Hold on one second. Oh no, I don't have it pulled up. All right. Oh, there it is. Yes, I do. Hallelujah. Okay. And I'm going to put it in present mode. All right, hopefully you can all see that. I can't see the chat, so Allison, if something comes up, just let me know. So one of the suggestions, it was kind of laid it out like, what does traditional family engagement looked like in the past, and what have been some of the cultural challenges to that, like culturally appropriate family engagement, and what have been some of our barriers, and how might we approach that in our current situation? And they gave some assumptions and then some kind of potential strategies that might work. So right now I just posted what their strategies were or their suggestions, but I really encourage you to read the whole little article. So one of their suggestions was that educators can increase family engagement by being flexible, trying as hard as they can to provide students with a menu of activities that can be done independently. Of course, that's a little easier with older kids than younger kids. And many families said that they preferred having a week's worth of activities up front so they can plan it around their work schedules, which I thought was really interesting. I know having multiple children needing to be on multiple Zooms at the same time, exactly, you know, that, and you only have one device or one phone, or, you know, that can be incredibly challenging. Educators can keep caregivers involved by streamlining their communication and offering clear expectations. One of the complaints I've heard, even just from my own friends, is they're getting, you know, 15 different emails a day from different teachers, and they're feeling like their kid's personal assistant, like they just spend all their time trying to decipher the different emails instead of one consistent message. So I thought that was also, it resonated. And that it's okay to spend time checking in on your students, that assuring parents that you're there to support them and that they're not going to miss any learning opportunities, and that we're going to figure this out, and that this is going to be, we'll be able to recover and make up what we missed when we come back together, and just trying to be that kind of reassuring voice that they need. So I thought those were, yeah, interesting. Emily, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, I know that it's, you know, we're kind of thinking about what might work best for the families and trying to balance that against what the realities are for educators. So of course, it's much easier at the younger grades to maybe streamline communications from teachers, special ed teachers, occupational therapists, that kind of thing. A little more tricky when you get into the upper grades and they might have multiple teachers. So I think as we go through this, it's kind of trying to think about all those that may be impacted by these recommendations, and making certain that our expectations, I feel like that's the overwhelming message in a lot of this, is that we have to, I know it sounds terrible, but I feel like we have to keep lowering the bar of expectations in terms of productivity and just, you know, even in terms of what we can expect from our kids, from our families, and from ourselves. So it's very un-American to say that we need to keep lowering the bar of expectation, but I think it's really appropriate for right now.
Yeah, great. Sissy, do you want to share your comment? Would you be okay with that, with the group, and anything you want to Alice add?
Oh, yeah, only I just no, I think it's great to hear the feedback, and I think it's really dependent for families on their situations. You know, if they're like, I think a lot of older teens, at least the ones I know, some are still working and trying to balance their schedule around work. Some are still caring for younger siblings. So also for them, having an idea of like what the workload is in a week is also helpful.
Yeah, yeah, I found that works with my own kids as well. I love that. Okay, I think we're ready to try our first breakout. You ready, Allison? Let me pose the question. So our goal is to break you into groups of roughly 8 for 10 minutes. Okay, fingers crossed. And I would like you, we're going to do 2 different breakouts. The first one, we're going to talk about what the challenges have been. And then we're going to come back together and kind of share some of that. And then based on some of that, hopefully then we can respond to the needs people are feeling and talk about what strategies have been successful, first as a small group and then as a large group. So first your challenges, come back together, then our successes and maybe responses to those challenges, and then come back together. Does that sound good for everybody? Thumbs up, yeah? All right. Okay, so this first breakout, if it works, I want you to talk about what do you need help with? What are you struggling with? What has been a challenge? Okay, Allison.
Okay, I'm clicking the button that says create breakout rooms, and after this
Allison, before you do that, when folks do break out, if they don't mind and they're comfortable to do it, even if you guys just do a quick like, hi, I'm so-and-so, just say hi to each other and maybe share your names, just to you know, break the ice a little bit.
Yes, good call, Emily. Always reminding me about connection. I love it. Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm clicking the button. Open all rooms.
All right. Yes, I'm being invited to a break.
Join.
All right, hi. I think I'm gonna, let's see, gallery view. Okay, so are you all, oh, I need to, more. Okay, if you guys can unmute yourselves. Hi. Hello?
Anybody want? Go.
I'll go. I'm Chris Jenkins. I'm in Kansas. I am a full-day preschool teacher. This year I had 22 munchkins, over the state limit by 2 because we hired a 6th grade teacher that had twins. What are you gonna do? And then I also do breakout sessions on engaging families in their child's education, and I'm writing a book.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Chris.
So I'll go. I'm Tina Halleck. I live in upstate New York, and I am a parent of a child who struggled significantly with her mental health. About 7 years ago, I helped create this thing called the Family Navigator Partnership. So our role is to support parents, not in an advocacy role, but instead in kind of a bridging role. So we work with the school to help, I would say we help families understand schools and schools understand families in a way that fosters partnership, because we know that when we were working with the school, it was much easier than when we were in an adversarial role. So I'm not sure that this is exactly, it seems like maybe there are a lot of educators on this call, and I am certainly not in that role, but family engagement is our specialty. So.
It's kind of funny. It seems like almost everybody is sort of in that role from this group.
In my role?
Well,
Or
just that people have, yeah, I mean, that, you know, folks are talking about that they're, you know, yeah, part of the focus of their work is family engagement.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, my name is Rhonda Harris, and I am from Cumming, Georgia. I'm school social worker / mental health coordinator of a very large district. We have over 50,000 students and 42 buildings that I oversee when linkages for mental health. So I'm like the go-between of bringing those outside agencies in to work with our students when it comes to mental health. And or other types of services that they may need. And I'm not on the front line working so much as what my social workers are, but I am in constant contact with our school social workers, usually on a daily basis, along with our school counselors, which we have 120 plus school counselors also. So always working.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Huge.
Yeah.
So Alison, do you want to introduce yourself to the group?
Sure, I'm Alison Sibylla, and I'm the community facilitator for the Northeast Mid-Atlantic region for ACES Connection. But I have worked in education too. I did religious education for Unitarian Universalists for a little while.
So Emily, I would love to share some of the things that I've learned about family engagement or some of the challenges. Is it appropriate?
Oh, please. Yeah, absolutely.
We come from a very low literacy rate, adult literacy rate in Northeast Spokane. Partially it's because we have a lot of new arrivals, immigrants and refugees. They're from the greater part of Eastern Washington, all settled in Northeast Spokane for the most part because we have the health insurance that goes along with that. So many English language learners, but also people born here that just never had good reading rates. And so it's causing a lot of stress as they're trying to navigate helping their students learn. And so not only is there technology issues and internet issues and all of those things. But the stress is mounting because especially at the middle school level, the kids are realizing that if they just say they can't log on, or they just forget their password or whatever else it is, that, you know, their parents really can't do anything about it. And they get out of doing whatever it is that the schools had designed. And so from our perspective as a nonprofit trying to make sure that our rates of childhood abuse and neglect and domestic violence and mental health, you know, all stay in check, we sort of walk a line of easing what the school district is saying and saying, make sure you focus on mental health and taking breaks and self-care and that kind of thing. So it doesn't necessarily feel good, but just because we're holistic, it seems like for a certain sector of our families that that's the route to take in the short term.
So I'm giving you a thumbs up and saying I think that I work in a very rural, pretty poor, well, it's very divided. So we have like winery owners, and then we have people who barely can eat. And I was just talking with someone this morning about the fact that, you know, if we think about Maslow, it doesn't matter what resources you have, we are all looking for safety. And I've been on a lot of calls. We have a regional social work group. Sorry, I have puppies in with me. And they basically, you know, they want more resources. And I think what families need right now is to take a breath and, you know, talk about abuse, and the more pressure, the worse it is for them. And so I know we have to get things done, and in New York State, at least, the schools, the state has really let up on a lot of the regulations and a lot of the expectations. And I think that is just survival right now. We've got to survive this. And, you know, and a lot of our people really seriously don't have internet. They don't have internet, and it's not that they can afford it. It's just, it doesn't go to where they live.
Exactly.
So it's a tough time. So.
Other people want to piggyback on what these ladies are sharing?
Yeah, I would agree, Susan, here. And that the whole thing about being rural, and it's, you know, I have the same situation where we're at. Half the county we're on the ocean, and half the county is super wealthy and has tons of resources to lean on. And then the other half of the county has absolutely nothing. And a month without work is devastating. So many families. And it's that powerlessness, and then that inability, even if you do have some funding, to not have internet. I mean, I'm trying to do Zoom meetings with my staff, and half the staff has to drive somewhere to be able to get online. It's terrible. That's just terrible.
Yeah, it really has highlighted that broadband gap in accessibility, this whole pandemic, which isn't really honestly widely acknowledged. But it's, I mean, I experienced the same thing. I
agree.
Yeah, I experienced the same thing in rural New Hampshire. There's a lot of areas that don't have any sufficient cells, not even just cell service, but broadband or internet. Yeah. Chris or Rhonda, do you guys want to add anything else, or Allison?
I don't. Well, the county that I live in, we're one of two extremes. So south part of our county is very affluent. You know, it's not unusual to see $1 million and $2 million homes, and then you go to the north part of the county and people are living in places you drive by and say, somebody lives there. So we kind of struggle with that. Some of the same things that I hear you guys that you're struggling with. And I must say that as a district, in the beginning, I was a little concerned because I think they were talking about they wanted the teachers to be teaching bell to bell and all of this other. And I was like, that ain't going to be happening. And they really have like pulled back and have listened to the staff and have listened to the community and saying, you know, it's too much. So I do have to give our district that much credit on, you know, we're working on building some learning paths right now for our staff on so when they come back, they'll be a little bit better trauma informed of working with the students, with our main focus on the staff themselves, because I'm more concerned about the adults in the building than I am about the kids. Because I think if the adults do well, then your kids are going to do well. And if the adults have the tools they need and to be able to recognize what needs to be referred on or out, then we know that those kids are going to get the services they need. So I think that's, our biggest focus right now is just working with the staff and making sure that they're okay. And then just kind of looking about what will next school year bring for us. No one knows.
No. Chris, do you want to jump in here?
I was listening, and our district, well, first of all, let's start with our state. Our state did an awesome job. They brought in teachers from across the state and made a continuous learning plan for pre-K through seniors.
Where are you? Oh, Kansas. Oh, yeah. You guys are, yeah. Yeah, you're the anomaly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
And so we were given parameters. So like my babies have 30 minutes of instructional time a day. Well, normally when I do a read aloud, I'm so busy putting my 2 cents worth in that it ends up being 20 minutes long anyway. Oh, look at this. Oh, did you see this? Oh, look at that. Doesn't that make you remember? But what our district did early on was sent out a survey, who needs a device. And then they made sure there was one device per family, not per kid, but per family that didn't have a trustworthy device. And then they put hotspots on the school buses and drove them to neighborhoods and just parked them for the day. And they'd be parked from 8 to 5.
All right.
Yeah, I know. I mean, they were on top of it. I was really impressed.
Do they have, are you a well-resourced district? Is that part of the reason why that could happen?
No, it's a consolidated district.
Yep.
In the town where I teach, there's an elementary and the highest school. The middle school's out in the country, and then the other elementary school is in the other town. There are, I looked it up last night, there are 1,000 people in our town, most of which are there because of the availability of meth.
Oh.
So my kids they've got some pretty crummy home lives to go home to. So we do weekly check-ins with them, video chats, so that we can actually see their faces and see that they're doing okay. And we decided that as a pre-K team.
And is that working well?
Well, I've got, if they don't sign up after I've hounded them, because they know I hound them, because I hound them about conferences too. So if I get hold of them 3 different ways, then I turn it over to the principal, and the principal, the counselor, and the school resource officer do a home visit.
Wow.
You haven't logged on, you haven't checked in with your teacher. We're just here to make sure you're okay.
Nice.
And I've got 2, but one jumped on our sing-along last night. And first time I heard from him in 3 weeks. But I've got another one that didn't jump on at all. So he's on the list for tomorrow. And they're going to go check in with him. I don't know.
Yeah. And
I mean, go ahead.
And I think one of the hardest things too is like when teachers were at first struggling with, well, this child didn't log on. Well, the social workers were aware of, well, that's because that family, the parents have to still work, and it's a 3rd grader watching the kindergarten student.
Yeah.
Some of those different pieces. But I think the one hard part, it has been like our Department of Children and Family Services, they've like furloughed some of their work.
Oh yeah.
And they're not even going out into the home.
Nope.
And then after about the 2nd week that we were sheltered in Georgia, then we told our social workers, you guys aren't going out anymore either. And I think that's probably been the hardest part, because you can't get your eyes on some of those kiddos. And if you know the families, like the social workers and the teachers do, or the counselors, then they really are concerned about them.
Yeah, it was hard for me because I didn't know how much to push, because I didn't want to push to the point that mom or dad went ballistic and took it out on the kids, because he's 5, he can't log himself on. There has to be an adult or an older sibling to help him. And if nobody's available to do that, I can't keep pushing and have something really negative happen to that baby.
So I hear you. And I guess one thing that I heard on a different call this week was the concern from families. And actually there was a printed piece of something that came across that talked about looking at people's houses and what do they have and how are they neglecting their kids. And I mean, these are real struggles for the families that I work with and I work very intimately. They trust me. I go into their homes and they know I'm not going to call CPS. And if there were ever a problem, there's a fail-safe for that. However, they really worry about that. And so I wonder if some of this not logging in is, you're going to see that I don't have an outlet cover and I'm going to get a CPS report. Well, and I'm not saying you would,
No,
but
I know.
literally that has happened. And it really drives people away from wanting to seek help. And, so I'm constantly trying to help them understand that everybody isn't out to get them. And it's a hard thing to build that trust.
It is, especially because, like you said, we're in already this defensive state as a result of the pandemic and all that's going on.
Right,
so a lot of us don't feel safe anyways. And then to think that, I think certain families may feel as though they don't want the invasion of privacy that a school can bring when it's trying to, and we're just trying to reach them. We're just trying to help, but it doesn't feel like that for them.
Right. Yeah.
Like
it's just a reality, I think. It's just a reality to think about when we think about, with our trauma-informed lens about these families and what they've been through in their world and the parents and everybody. Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard for them.
The room's closing, ladies. I don't know if we get to be back together again. We're going to break out again, but this was great. This was so great, you guys. Thanks. I really enjoyed meeting you all. So can we see it can I just see if you can give us a thumbs down to a thumbs up? What's the experience of doing breakout rooms for folks? Where are we at? Because I thought it was awesome, but I'm just curious what our experience for other people was. And Allison, did we lose Lara? Where's she at?
I think it was giving people a minute to wrap up. And so she's probably going to take that minute. So if you want to maybe share some of your experience, Emily.
Well, so I think one of the things that Lara and I were hoping is that we could sort of cull some themes related to this to connect it to considering possibly either a slight shift in our thinking or some actual tactical strategies around the challenges that folks are experiencing. So I'll just name a couple of themes that I heard out of our group, if people from our group are okay with that. So we talked a bit about the digital divide, which is a very real equity issue and very prevalent in a lot of parts of this country because we don't really think often about rural areas. I live in a rural area. Broadband, is not even in New Hampshire, it's not common. And so, being able to get online is really challenging. So that's one piece of the struggle of connecting with families. The other piece of it that we talked about was just that perhaps some of these families were already, well, not some, many families were already experiencing extreme stress circumstances due to their economics and potentially addiction issues or mental health issues, and that those conditions aren't different now, but perhaps worsened, and so they may be resistant to outside attempts to connect, that it doesn't feel like connection, it doesn't feel like support, but it feels more like invasion and people leering in and wondering what are you doing in there? So those were just a couple of the themes that we heard. Lara, I don't know if you want to break in or some other.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Both of those things came up in our group. The rural area, digital connection in rural areas really came up. And that parents feel really like shame and stress because they can't connect, and they're trying to, and they're doing the best they can to try to connect, and they're not able to keep up. And then that kind of spiral of like shame and I'm not doing enough. And how do we let them know that it's okay? And then that, like you said, that kind of, this kind of environment adds additional stress to families that are already dealing with maybe some dysfunction and stress, and that trying to check on them or connect with them may feel like an invasion into their world that they're not open to. It's hard enough when we try to do it in person. And that, managing our expectations, helping families manage their expectations came up, just that kind of whole theme of like managing expectations, and then self-care, our own self-care.
Yeah.
Those came
and
up.
I saw in the chat that Sissy also noted the language divide, which I see Alyssa next to me, that's and one of the women in our group also worked in the state of Washington, in an area where there was a lot of immigrants and refugees that reside there, and so the language barrier is a very real thing. And I think it extends beyond that. We're talking about again predominantly that there is just significant cultural divide. We got to invite Joe Tress here at some point to talk about, sort of that white supremacy culture and how that influences our expectations and what we're trying to do with families and how we're trying to bridge the gap of connection. And maybe in our best intentions, we're inadvertently making mistakes.
Yeah, and I see some great comments like the academic skills of parents. I mean, we, especially in high school, being able to help them. I told my kid I cannot help him with his chemistry, and I'm, he has the most resources that he needs. There's a lot to consider there. And yeah, the fear of immigration status and that isolation, right? People are already isolated in that way, and that is only increasing. I love all these comments. So if any, like I said, we harvest these comments. So if someone from each group would just put in a couple of those takeaways, that would be really helpful for us to gather, to try to capture all of this. So we're going to break out again in about 1 minute to share strategies that have been working, because I don't want to let that get away, and that will give us time to get back together as well. So I would love it if we can break apart for like another 8-9 minutes and talk about things that are really working well with some of these challenges in mind, and then let's come back together and try to be a resource for each other. Does that sound good? Thumbs up? Yes. Okay, Emily.
Yep.
Good. Anything to add?
I think
Allison.
It looks like I can do this. Looks like I can make the same rooms.
Great. That'd be great.
Okay, cool. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. So let me.
So when we break out again, I think sometimes like we're talking about maybe strategies or things that we're doing that work well, but I also think it's meaningful to have conversations about, are people keeping things in the forefront that they think are helpful when they go to try and engage with families. So it doesn't always have to be that practical, tactical strategy, because maybe we don't have one in this situation. But is there some way in which we can think about the situation slightly differently that might inform what we do or don't do?
Yeah. Great question. I love that. All right, Allison, go for it. All right, join your breakout.
coordinators, they work with parents directly. We have ESOL counselors. So when you have your first responders who are really used to a group of families they work with. So the families, as soon as they see their numbers, they pick up the phone right away. It takes away the fear, the stress. So when those first responder workers have a good sense of the needs of the group of the families they connected with, and have the higher ups then listen to that feedback. Because what was not working, because we're such a huge school district, was just the rolling of orders from the top down without really understanding what was going on, at our family levels. And also our county is one of the richest and one of the poorest at the same time. So we really leaves a lot of families in between. So that has worked, to have first responders working with families and really understand the needs and have that connection where stress and fear is taken out of it, mostly for our immigrant population. Working with nonprofit organization in our county has really worked out. So we know, if we have a family where mom and dad or single mom or whatever is the scenario is now in a hospital, it has worked where we can turn around and reach out to, okay, here's the name of the family, those are the needs. And then there's a meeting where community organizers and different entities like churches, school, all of it is at the same table, and then we go through the needs that that particular family needs. Again, if you are not connected with the community, then those families fall through the cracks. So I would love to see more first responders being hired, because we need to go through a lot of families, but again, we work with what we have so far, so that has worked.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hello.
Which places do you all work in education?
Yes.
Yeah, and which places are you from?
So I am from Maryland, and the county is called Montgomery County Public Schools.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the schools for the county I work with. So the county is Montgomery County. It's a
Okay.
huge school system.
Okay. What about Nathan and
Go ahead,
Wendell?
I just made a note here. We have a kind of a motto that we've learned over the years, that when it comes to engaging families, that families will come together if there's a purpose and a project, not just giving them food and incentives. So what we have found is that when we've worked with our family engagement, if we had a meal and we brought parents together for a project and a purpose, we got engagement, we got information we wanted from parents. And right now what we're talking about is, all right, now we have a meal program which we feed all the youth 0 to 18 in our community. All right, that's part of our state contract. But now we're talking about, how do you take that meal program and now go into the community, into neighborhoods where there is no Wi-Fi, and you go there with the food, and you go there to do a project and a purpose to bring families in. We're pretty encouraged by that. We think, because that's worked for us, where we have huge gatherings at our tribal casino, or whether we have them at the school, we think we can replicate that by taking our 8 to 10 buses with Wi-Fi, with tables, with educators, with food and learning activities, and going out into the community. So that's the work that's being worked on right now in our schools.
Where are your schools, Wendell?
We're on the Menominee Indian Reservation in Wisconsin.
Okay. Jane, is that you on the call? It could be Jane. Nathan?
I'm from Harrisonburg, Virginia, and working as a school liaison to help the communication between new immigrants and the school, the families, and helping in this time deal with this overwhelming issue of new English learners trying to figure out what just happened to their whole English program, and the camaraderie of being in school to try to learn English. We have many 16 and 17-year-olds that have joined this community, and they've been separated from an academic setting for 3 to 5 years. So about the only way to give them a help was to have them in a class setting with their colleagues, knowing that they're all going through this together. So that was some of the challenges. So now we're trying to get that to, reach out, and just a lot of school contacts, a lot of the teachers reaching out, just saying, how are you doing? Do you have technology? But just really, how are you doing? Are your parents working? Or are they fearful to go back to the plants? We have a lot of poultry industry. And now we have a lot of COVID in our community. We're a hot zone for the state of Virginia and maybe the nation. I heard that we were either number 6 or number 7 in cases per 1,000. So another outreach is we're going to try to provide free testing for 100 families to get COVID tests this Saturday, trying to help them be aware of the resource testing. So there's just so much fear right now from the immigrant population. So it's overwhelming. The academics are second, and I'm really encouraged by Wendell showing us that you can focus on the SEL Premier first to support the families, to help them get through this extreme time of trauma, and reach out with all the community connections that we have, where the food banks are operating, where they can possibly get medical attention. Kids are needing to see the dentist. They no longer get the nurses at our high school. That was primary care for a large population of students that don't have insurance, nor a primary care physician. So it's just on and on, like you're saying, Elizabeth, reaching out and trying to be that resource for people that they realize are from the school system. So there's a trust that we can be a contact when they have questions too, to come back, call us, and we'll help try to find resources together.
So it looks like we have about 1 minute left. I do not work in education, so but I love hearing all these from you all.
In just 1 minute, Wendell, it's so good for us on the bottom pole to really hear how superintendents are really taking it a more human side of the coin. So thank you, Wendell. I wish we could clone you and put you in our school system.
Well, thank you very much, but I'm just very fortunate. I've got a great team of staff I work with.
I'm just curious if you all are if you post these stories, do you guys post these in ACES Connection? Are you in Lara's education group? No?
This is my first seminar. My wife has followed ACES because she's a trauma and resilience trainer at a local university. And then she said, you should look at some of these resources for your high school. So that's why I'm here today. So I'm quite impressed, and I'm looking for articles. And I would just look at one of your other videos on how highly stressed families taking care of their SPED students at home, just creates an incredible stress on your DNA and your aging. And so they had circles of support, which was a positive way to support these highly stressed families, just freaking out because the kids were now at home, and how can they support these high needs students? So it was an impressive 6-minute video. And it was just wonderful. So it's on your website, and I'm going to send that out. So thank you.
Great.
So I'm the one facilitating closing these up, so I know I have to do it right now. But I want to invite you all to join Lara's community on ACES Connection. If you click on communities and then you look for, it's called ACES in Education. But these stories are so valuable that you're sharing, and people want to know about them. They're wanting to know what works. And also like Wendell, or, you know, if you guys are doing stuff that's working really well, like email these examples to Lara, because we really do want to share them. That's kind of the whole thing. You know, we want to hear them. We want to know what's working. So, yeah. Okay. So I'm going to close the room. So nice to meet you all. So Lara, I was telling my room that we want to continue to hear people's stories. Like, they need to post them in your ACEs in Education group.
Yes. Yeah. This was really fruitful. I really loved hearing what my group had to say, some amazing strategies. So we're going to probably go over a few minutes today is my guess, but not by long. And I would love for people to continue putting in the chat, like just start now, what came up in that last little breakout so that we can try to capture it. I heard some really great, around this idea that just like naming how we're feeling, both for ourselves and for parents, like naming it out loud to them, naming it out loud with ourselves, and communicating that what we're doing is enough, that what families are doing is enough. That what teachers are doing is enough. Like, it is enough, and we are doing our best. And just naming how hard it is. There were some really good suggestions from our social workers in my group that sending a text before calling helped people know that there was an unknown number calling. I thought that was really interesting. Because it's true, if I have an unknown number calling me, I don't usually pick it up. So they've been sending texts beforehand, using Google Voice, and texting parents directly because they're more likely to respond to text. So just trying to be really creative in how they're reaching people, not just email and not just phone calls. And that, you know, there have been some good supports from phone companies and internet trying to, you know, create hotspots and give free internet. Like, they're trying very hard in LA, in rural areas. So yeah, I would love to hear anybody else from their group. Sissy, Emily, Allison, anybody else? You're muted.
Okay, so I mean, I don't, one of the women in our group was also sharing that they had used essentially their, they were trying to be more sensitive to, like, initially just connecting people with food resources, but then as time went on, they realized that, like, the food resources weren't all equal, because people had different ethnic, you know, sort of food preferences. And that, just like you said, they were able to then use technology through texting so that families, instead of, you know, they could actually text in what it was that they wanted, and it got rid of that whole Wi-Fi need. So it was using different kinds of technology to bridge those gaps. And I also heard too, just that it's because it's upended so much, that it's diminished bureaucracies and barriers that used to exist as a result of bureaucracy. So there's people that are talking more across sector lines, across religious lines, engaging more spontaneously with one another. Even James was mentioning that he's hearing that teachers who didn't formally engage with families, they're like all over it now. And so there's new relationships that are being built as a result of this circumstance. Just really fruitful, great stuff in our conversation.
I love that. That's great. One of the things that I mentioned to my group, my son's school has set aside Monday and Tuesday next week as only student check-in days. So no new assignments will be assigned, no academics will happen. And their advisors and counselors and teachers are dividing up the kids, and every kid will have a one-on-one connection. And that they had to be okay with setting aside 2 days of, you know, academics to really just focus on making sure that they connect with every single kid. And I thought, I mean, that's.
Can I just mention one other so Tina Halleck also she shared with us that they don't call it like a support group, they call it like a book group, but that they had developed a platform in the evenings, one in the morning and one in the evening, where parents could come together, actually like a support group, and talk about how things were going. And I was like, I love that, because I haven't really heard that concept yet either. So that one was a really great one.
Great. Yeah, and Jessie said she really looks forward to taking this conversation and maybe leaping forward next week into what's taking this kind of like what's working well and how do we continue that when we start going. So I think that's a great idea for part of next week. I like that a lot. I'm gonna Sissy, can you share? Would you share?
Yep, I'm typing up like crazy.
I know, I'm like, no, just get in there.
But we share tons of things. Like one person was sharing how she saw there was free food delivery, so adding in some bringing food, but then also adding in a coloring sheet for the kids, as well as information about mandatory reporting. Somebody else talked about getting domestic violence resources listed at the beginning of right when for a community college. Please type in the notes if I'm butchering this, but adding in resource numbers right when young adults are logging into a system that's new to them, and then just saying like, why didn't we do more of that before? We also talked about direct parent association stepping in to reach out to other parents, just saying, how are you doing? How are you holding up? Maybe working with the school if possible, but also just working on our own. And then I have a bunch of notes too. One person, they'd set up a Facebook page and added daily activities of things you could do around the house at home that was free, no cost. So lots of great stuff.
Yeah, I love it. All right. So in a second, I'm going to have Emily do a closing, but I want, while we're still together, put as much in the chat as you can so that we can continue to gather all of this.
Lara,
yeah.
do you mind if that way Emily can close? Can I say a couple of administrative stuff?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I love the breakout rooms. I hope you all did too. So we're going to keep that structure every time because I think it was really, really fruitful for everyone. And as always, yeah, just thank you. And I'll hand it off to Allison and then Emily.
Awesome. Because I loved Emily's closing last time. That was so special. Okay, just administrative stuff. I just want to invite everyone to please continue this conversation on our acesconnection.com website. So some of you have been watching these and hearing my spiel, but I'm going to repeat it. So thanks for your patience. We would love to invite you all to join as a member of acesconnection.com. And when you're logged in, any member can post to our website, which is so cool because you're reaching, we now have 43,000 members. So, you're sharing your ideas with a lot of people, and we're co-creating this community. So I really invite you to come on over and post some of these things that are happening in your communities. Here's a link. I just posted it to Lara's group that she manages, a community. And so you can go ahead and join that community and post some of the amazing stories that you've shared here today as a blog. And that way, even more people can hear what's working for you, and this information can be shared even outside of this room. And so the other admin thing was just that this recording will be posted to YouTube by the end of the day tonight. So you can go ahead and go over to our YouTube site, which is just ACES Connection, and find it there. Okay, that's all. Thanks so much, Lara and Emily and Sissy and everyone.
All right, Emily, bring us home.
So I have just a little piece of writing that I was going to share that some of you maybe already seen float around on Facebook, but I think it's relevant to today's discussion. So here it is. I heard that we're all in the same boat, but it's not like that. We're in the same storm, but not in the same boat. Your ship could be shipwrecked and mine might not be, or vice versa. For some, quarantine is optimal, a moment of reflection, of reconnection, easy in flip-flops with a cocktail or coffee. For others, this is a desperate financial and family crisis. For some that live alone, they're facing endless loneliness, while for others, it's peace, rest, and time with their mother, father, sons, and daughters. With the $600 weekly increase in unemployment, some are bringing in more money to their households than they were when they were working. Others are working more hours for less money due to pay cuts or loss in sales. Some families of four just received $3,400 from the stimulus, while other families of four saw nothing. Some were concerned about getting a certain candy for Easter, while others were concerned if they had enough bread, milk, and eggs for the weekend. Some may want to go back to work because, some want to go back to work because they don't qualify for unemployment and are running out of money. Others want to kill those who break the quarantine. Some are home spending 2 to 3 hours a day helping their child with online schooling, while others are spending 2 to 3 hours a day to educate their kids on top of a 10 to 12-hour workday. Some have experienced the near death of the virus. Some have already lost someone from it, and some are not sure if their loved ones are going to make it. Others don't believe this is a very big deal. Some have faith in God and expect miracles during 2020. Others say the worst is yet to come. So friends, we're not in the same boat. We're going through a time when our perceptions and needs are completely different. Each of us will emerge in our own way from the storm. It's very important to see beyond what is at first glance, not just looking, but actually seeing. We are all on different ships during this storm, experiencing a different journey. Realize that and be kind.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. See you guys next week.
See you next week. Virtual hugs. Thank you for joining us.